This will be probably a little hyperbolic for some. But we just witnessed the greatest opening round in NBA playoff basketball history. We've never seen anything like this. And by the way, it goes back to Friday when the Grizzlies, and I told you they would be tough because I told you that their interior play would be too much for the Warriors. I knew that was going to be I don't really know if they'd win, but man, we talked about it on the show, and I really thought it would be a four-quarter game, and then you see what they did last night. So even starting Friday, we got a little foreshadow of a great weekend. Greatest opening weekend in NBA playoff history. Just think about the way this thing went sequentially, right? So first game in overtime, the Bucks win by 2. They beat Miami. Now that series is going deep, right? I'm not a staunch believer in the Bucks like some. I bailed out, and I did pick the Bucks to win in 7 when we did our predictions. I really was close to picking Miami, kind of a coin flip series, but Bucks win by a deuce. Overtime. First game, overtime. Boom. Then you say, well, the second game, what happened? Not much. Doncic just shoved 31 points down the Clippers' throat, and they smacked L.A. So, rough game for Paul George. Already, little negative energy engulfing that L.A. team. We'll get to the Lakers in a minute. So, first 2 games, one was an overtime thriller. The other was a really good game and a bit of a surprise for some, right? Then even the Celtics-Nets game, which was third up on the docket on Saturday, I know that the Nets eventually pulled away, but, in the third quarter, the Celtics were going blow for blow before the talent, as we know it will. I think we said, I think Teak said Nets in a sweep. I said Nets in 5. Maybe I give the Celtics 1 game because the Nets get a little lazy or complacent, or they rest somebody, whatever. But even that game was highly competitive for the duration. And then you get to the nightcap here, and the Blazers smashed the 3-seeded Denver Nuggets. Lillard goes off. So boom, 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 boom. Good stuff across the board, right? Then you get to yesterday. Now, all right, Washington will be no threat to the Sixers. Maybe they get a game max. I think I said Sixers in 5, so did Teague. Actually, he may have said that one was the sweep, but we both have it going short, as most people do. But you know what? It's not like something completely expected happened outside of the win. It's not like Embiid was 35 or, it was Tobias Harris who scored almost 40. So interesting. Then the Suns. The Suns absolutely punked the Lakers in a physical game. We'll get to the Chris Paul play in a moment. Awesome theater. Suns aren't messing around. Suns are good. And I picked Lakers in 7. I wanted to say Phoenix. Didn't have the guts. I think Phoenix is going to win the series now because they got the first one. So the Lakers, not only did the Lakers not have home court advantage, but now they are already down. So it's really like they're down 2 in terms of the home court stuff. So that was the second game. Then the third game, Trae Young and the Hawks take out my Knicks. The Knicks, they should have won that game by a deuce in the last seconds there. By the way, horrible. I'm going to give you, you're getting this. At least 2 minutes of the Knicks real fast. So I did not like the final play. Granted, not a lot of time, 0.9, whatever it was, but I didn't think the right person was inbounding the ball for the Knicks. I didn't like the play that was set up. I, unlike many, did not have an issue putting Frank Ntilikina in on Trae Young, even though he was ice cold for the final 8-9 seconds. Did it in the first half, and it worked out. So if you're going to give credit in the first half, he was cold then too. Had no problem with that because as much as you love Derrick Rose as a Knicks fan, Peyton's a disaster. He shouldn't be on the court at that point, even though the only thing he can do is play defense. Derrick Rose has no chance to stay in front of Trae Young, who's dancing at that point. I had no problem with the Frank Ntilikina substitution. The only thing I'll say about Randle, that was putrid performance by Julius Randle. And what the Knicks need to do, and I have full faith he will bounce back, by the way. Really good players do, and he will. But what the Knicks need to do is get him some easier shots. Get him in a little bit of rhythm, a dunk, a backdoor cut. So, everything was hard from the get-go. And I will say this, too. I picked the Knicks in 7, all right? Did I lean a tick with my heart? Possibly. Maybe I did. In totality, roster-wise, Hawks are absolutely better. There's no question. Like, you just look at the Hawks players, obviously Bogdanovich, and of course Trae Young and Collins and others too, Gallinari. They're better than the Knicks. I still think the Knicks will squeeze this off. I think they'll come back and win game 2, but a hell of a basketball game. And then last night, I mentioned before, the Grizzlies, the upstart Grizzlies. They take out the number 1 seed Utah Jazz. Now, the Jazz, and this is where you have to look at it this way. The Jazz were, 10-6 without Donovan Mitchell? So I understand we can get maybe a little overly wrapped up in this monumental upset. The 1 seed loses the first game, and it's surprising. I'm not going to say I thought the Grizz would win, not after the relatively quick turnaround. But the Jazz would not have been a first seed if Donovan Mitchell did not play this year, because they were pretty good without him and they had a couple of win streaks in there, but they lost more without him than they did with him. So, a lot of that 1 seed, that grip, was carved out with Mitchell being the primary piece of the puzzle, even though they're the ultimate team. Shooters, role guys, good coach, defense, etc. So I can't say that I'm stunned by that result. But again, think about this, guys. From Saturday, sequentially, of the 8 games, the only games that you could say were either a little boring or lacked true theater in the final few minutes of the game, you'd say Philly, Washington, but that was still interesting because of Tobias Harris, the end of the Nets and the Celtics, and for me, that's it. Because even though the Suns beat the Lakers by 9, it's the Lakers, defending champions. All right, first of all, under no circumstance is that a dirty play. And by the way, I don't begrudge Frank Vogel for doing that. He's got to do that. Much like, and we talked about this, you know what? It may have helped them last night, too. That's the one thing I did leave out about the Knicks. I thought the Knicks got squeezed with the whistle a little bit. A couple phantom calls on Trae Young. Trae Young gets treated like Michael Jordan. He's been in the league a minute. I mean, he is a 3-level scorer. No doubt, because that floater is sick at the rim, too. Even though he's very diminutive in size, he's still very good in space. Trae Young gets too many calls. But the point is that McMillan, what did he say last week? Even though he kind of rescinded that over the weekend, said it was taken out of context. Well, the NBA, they want the Knicks ratings without quite saying that, but we all knew what the implication was. So, did it work out for the Hawks last night? Yep, and I told you it would. I said, Teak, and Teak didn't buy this, but I wound up being right. I said, Teak, this is smart, because referees, while they seem fairly anonymous, outside of a few that you really know, are human beings. And when human beings get criticized or accused of doing something that is not neutral in the ultimate execution or exercise of neutrality, being a referee in theory, right, then they are subconsciously going to rewire their mind and probably trying to disprove the thought that they might be a little homerish toward whatever team, in that instance, the Knicks. They probably go a little bit the other way to prove those doubters wrong. And what happened? The Hawks won by 2. And they got the benefit, in my mind, and not just as a Knick guy. I could put that aside. I thought the Hawks, and think the Hawks have a better roster, but I think the Hawks got a few calls, right? So Frank Vogel's just doing the same thing, laying the groundwork for Game 2. This is what happens every NBA playoff series. Pat Riley used to do it. Stan Van Gundy always, if he ever gets back to the playoffs, he'll be doing it again. Always used to do it. Jeff Van Gundy would do it. The coaches do it, right? Brad Stevens has done it. The problem with Vogel's words is that it just wasn't even remotely dirty. Now, was LeBron maybe caught off guard that CP3 came darting in from behind him? Well, maybe. Doesn't mean that it's dirty. And if you watch it, and I actually tweeted this about 2 hours ago on my account at Brandon Tierney, and I got it off the TV, and then for my phone I did slow-mo. I would love to know where it's dirty. LeBron was not elevated when CP3 came in and tried to hip. First of all, it wasn't even a hip check. You have to look at this in terms of physics, right? Chris Paul is 6'1". I forget whatever he weighs, 6'1", but he's 6'1". LeBron is 6'8". If you don't go a little low, he's just going to push you out of the way. That's what you have to do. You have to box out properly. So I think what's happened, guys, is that we've become so accustomed to this free-flowing NBA, up and down, not a lot of rim protection, not many hard fouls, not many strong, assertive picks, that could be construed as dirty, not in the 80s or 90s, but now that's largely been taken away from our game. So if you see anything with an element, a modicum of physicality or aggression, oh, it's dirty. Chris Paul, you're dirty. He's a dirty player. Well, those are two separate issues. Can you make the case that Chris Paul has straddled the line over his career in terms of what's dirty or what's acceptable and what's not? Yes, you could. But that should not blur the lens or the prism of how that individual play yesterday is viewed. Not dirty. Love it. And I love it even more that it's on his boy, because that just tells you, if you didn't already know this about Chris Paul, which you do if you're a basketball fan, that guy is a throwback gamer who is dying to win a championship and will do whatever it takes. So, D-Cell, you watch basketball a lot. Unlike hockey, where I respect none of your opinions, I respect most of your NBA opinions. Dirty or no?
Not a dirty play, but Chris Paul doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. So the next day or that night, we all talk about, was it dirty, was it not dirty? If that's another player who we don't label as borderline dirty already, we don't even talk about it. But the play itself, no, not dirty. I'm fine with it.
I got you. Leave it there. I want to pick this up, and I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the Utah Jazz. They've got an issue with Donovan Mitchell. Health, one thing, but attitude or at least feel for the franchise, that has now become a big issue. I'll incorporate that next segment. But I want to pick up on what D-Cell said. I think this is a very important point, being unable to delineate between, again, the dirty reputation of Chris Paul and how it's viewed in individual isolated play. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.